Before I tell my two stories that I want to share, I did a show a year ago at the Coffee Gallery in Altadena. And I said to the audience that I'm blessed. As a storyteller, I'm blessed. Now that night I was performing with my musician friends. And I said, I'm blessed because very few storytellers have musicians who want to perform with them. I have that. I have it with three guys who are called the Three-Piece Ensemble. I have it with a blues musician, Brother Yusef, and I have it with several other musicians who say they enjoy performing with me. Now it's really they backing me up. It's not me doing anything for them. It's they backing me up. I'm blessed. But I'm blessed because every serious storyteller in this room, I performed with them. I have probably been on this stage more than any other storyteller in the series that Pam Green has put on because I'm part of two groups. And then I've done some things that were small groupings, like I performed with Vicki, and I've done some other things that were small groupings of performances. I'm blessed. Now I said something else, and I'm going to say it. I said, it was May 28th, 2005. I said, I'm 69, and I'm looking fine. And I'm looking for a girlfriend. And I'm a sexy man. Now there's a lot of ladies in that audience who I was interested in, but not one lady approached me and said, I'm interested in you. Now I'm going to be 70, May 28th, and I'm a sexy man. And I'm still looking for a girlfriend. Langston Hughes, the Harlem Renaissance man, wrote a modern folk character by the name of Jussie B. Simple. Now, the stories made their way into the Chicago Defender, and that's how the world became aware of Jussie B. Simple. One of the stories that Langston Hughes wrote was a story called Bebop. And here's that story. Jussie B. Simple was sitting on his porch. Now, the boxes, oh gosh, let me start again. Jussie B. Simple was sitting on his porch. And the record player had its speakers right on the windowsill. And the music was blaring out to the streets. And Jussie B. Simple was singing to the music. Shoot-a-dee-doo, a-doo-doo-doo-doo-da-ba-ba. Shoot-a-dee-doo, a-doo-doo-doo-boo-doo-doo-da-ba-ba. Pretty soon his friend came walking by. Shoot-a-dee-doo, a-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. Hey, good brother, have a seat and listen to good music. Shoot-a-dee-doo, a-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. I understand your landlady don't like none renters sitting on her porch. Oh, shit. Sit down, man. Listen to this good music. Do-da-dee-doo, a-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. Sounds like an old Dizzy Gillespie record to me. You got it, good brother. Da-da-dee-doo, a-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. Makes me think about Cab Calloway back in the old days. What was he doing? Hey, hey, ho. Oh, man, it was hotty, 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 ho. Hotty, 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 hey. That's it. All nonsense to me. Oh, man. Bop makes a lot of sense. I don't know what you're talking about. Rebop. Now, how are you going to make some sense out of rebop? It's not rebop, it's bebop. Rebop, bebop, all the same to me. You don't know the difference between rebop and bebop? Well, dig, let me tell you. Rebop is what white musicians play. Bebop is what black musicians play. You dig? You don't dig. What dig? Rebop is what white musicians play so that they can learn how to play bebop. Oh, simple. You bring race into everything. It isn't everything. Now, dig. Now, some folks say that white musicians can play bebop, and again, let me tell you, here's what they have to do. They have to go to the clubs and listen to that music of Charlie Parker and Charlie Christian and Max Roach and Thelonious Monk, and then they got to go home and listen to their records, and then they got to go back to the clubs and listen to those musicians. And then they go back to their homes and listen to those records. And they got to do that day after day after week after week. And then they got to imitate with their instruments the music that they heard in the clubs and on the record. And pretty soon that music began to filter into their bodies. And then, good brother, that's when they're able to play bebop. Well, I'll tell you, Simple. It's all nonsense music to me. Bop makes a lot of sense. I don't know what you're talking about. What kind of sense does bop make? You don't know where bop comes from? No, I don't, Simple. Where does bop come from? From the police. From the police. That's right, from the police. When that police gets his club, he starts hitting that black dude in the head. Bop, 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 bop. And that dude, he be hollering and screaming, and all that pain, it just goes throughout his whole body. He's yelling, he's crying. Oh, dreams deferred. Oh, anguish. And it goes way back to generations to slavery. And it comes back into his soul, and all that sound just going all through the atmosphere, and it's finding its way into the cattle keys, the thelonious monk. Dum, 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 dum. And the saxophone of Charlie Parker. Da, 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 da. And the drums of Max Roach. And the bass of Ray Brown. Boom, 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 boom. And the trumpet of Miles Davis. Da, 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 da. And the voices of Sarah Vaughan and Ella Fitzgerald and Billie Day Holiday. Oh, and all that sound is filtering in and out of those folks. And that, my brother, is where bebop comes from. Simple, your explanation depresses me. Good brother, your ignorance depresses me. And his friend walks on, and Simple continues listening to his music. Bebop-de-doo, a-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo-da-bop-bop. John Henry. When John Henry was born, the sun stayed up all night, and the moon stayed up all day. Thunder roared in the heavens, and lightning flashed in the sky, and the wind blew hard and swayed the trees back and forth. But it felt like a gentle breeze on a baby's face. When John Henry was born, the rooster crowed both day and night. The dog howled, the owl hooted, the cow bellowed, and the grasshopper beat out a rhythm with his back legs. But it all sounded like a symphony of animal music. When Johnny was born, he was already walking and talking, and held a hammer in his hand. When he's 3 days old, he's full grown, standing nearly 10 feet tall. When he came out of his bedroom, his mama didn't even know who he was. Who are you, she said. Well, I'm John Henry, your son, he said. But you was just born a few days ago. Now I'm full grown, a natural man. And by looking at this house, we're poor as church mice. That's the truth, his mama said. Your papa died before you were born. Died trying to make something out of this old piece of farm. But I told him you can't grow no crops in clay soil. But he wouldn't listen. Just kept on trying. Tried until he died. Well, I'm going to make some money for the house, said John Henry. I'm going out in the world to get me a job. But son, you ain't spent no time with your mama yet. Ain't got time, mama. Got to get me a job. Got to make some money for the house. A man ain't nothing but a man. I got to go. John Henry set out to get himself a job. He was so big, he made big, long steps when he walked. And he walked so fast, it seemed like he was running, but he weren't. It was just those big, long steps. First person he met when he got to town was Polly Ann. Hello, big man. Hello, yourself, said John Henry. I'm looking for me a job. You know, I might find some work. Big as you are, you need to be a stevedore or a lumberjack or a railroad man with a 10-pound hammer in his hand. Railroad work sounds fine to me. You see, I was born with a hammer in my hand. Anything with a hammer is what I want to do. You know, I might find the railroad company. I'll take it there, said Polly Ann. So Polly Ann took John Henry to the railroad company. First moment, boss captain saw John Henry hiding right away. And John Henry went to work that very day. John Henry worked with a crew of men. And what they did was hammering spikes in the wooden ties that held the rails in place. Another job they did was drill through mountains to make tunnels for the trains to run through. John Henry worked with that crew for 5 whole years. And during those 5 years, John Henry and his crew worked faster and better than any crew on the railroad. Where the crews had laid 5 miles of railroad track, John Henry and his crew would lay 10 miles. Where the crews would drill halfway through a mountain, John Henry and his crew would drill all the way through the mountain. And John Henry got married. He married Polly Ann. And they had a John Henry Jr. And of course, John Henry sent the money home to his mom. One day, After a long, hard day's work, boss captain called all the men together. He had a very serious look on his face. It took him a long time to say what he's going to say. Men, I got some bad news to tell you. I think I'm going to have to let some of you go. You see, a new machine is coming. And they tell me to do the work of a whole crew of men. They tell me I can hammer more spikes and drill through mountains faster than any man can imagine. Faster than a crew with John Henry on it, laughed one of the men. I believe so, said boss captain. What do they call this machine? Asked one of the other men. A steam dry machine, said boss captain. When is it coming? Tomorrow morning. The men who run the railroad company call it progress. But I don't see it as progress when men lose jobs. I thought I'd tell you so you know. All the men were quiet for a long time. And then one of the older men tipped his hat and said, thank you, and slowly walked off. And slowly the other men followed behind. Some of the men didn't sleep that night. Those that did tossed and turned. The men who were married told their wives. Some of the men worked picking cotton before they got out of the railroad. Others were sharecroppers. And a few others were handing in on big plantations. None of those jobs compared to the earnings of the railroad. Railroad work was hard work, but good pay. The other jobs was hard work and low pay. The next morning, the men came to work with heavy thoughts in their minds, with deep worries on their faces. They all gathered around, waiting for the morning whistle to start work. No words passed between them. They all stood silent, waiting. Then John Henry came up the road. His walk was the same light-hearted steps, and on his face the same broad smile. Good morning, men, he said, and he walked right past him and up to boss captain. Boss captain, can I have a word with you? Sure, John Henry. What's on your mind? I've been thinking about that steam dry machine. And boss captain, I think I can outwork that machine. John Henry, can't no man outwork a machine. I can. I'm a natural man. And before I let a steam dry machine beat me, I'll die with a hammer in my hand. Just then one of the crew workers called out, I think I see the steam machine coming. All the men looked at the long stretch of railroad tracks. Way up in the distance, they could see a machine all shining and glistening under the early morning sun. And right behind that machine was a train with one passenger car attached. And they both were coming slow and steady along the railroad tracks. When the machine all shining and glistening got close enough, the men could tell it was a steam dry machine. They could hear chuck chugging and spew spouting. They could see pistons going up and down, and bigger pistons going back and forth, and steam shooting out of the smokestack. And then it came to a halt, and the train with the passenger car came to a halt. The operator of the steam dry machine got out, and walked around and looked at the machine he had been riding. Out of the passenger car came a group of well-dressed men, wearing dark hats and smoking big cigars. They all gathered around the steam dry machine, talking and smiling among themselves. The railroad crew workers walked over to the machine also, but they weren't talking, and they weren't smiling, just looking. Boss captain turned to John Henry. You think you can outwork that machine? I'll tell you what, said John Henry. Set up a contest between us and see who wins. All right, John Henry. Let me go talk to the railroad company men. So boss captain walked into the men with the dark hats and big cigars. John Henry watches boss captain talk to the railroad company men. He watches they suddenly burst into laughter. Then boss captain pointed to John Henry. And the railroad company men turned and looked at the mighty John Henry standing nearly 10 feet tall with muscles that nearly ripped his shirt open. Slowly they stopped laughing. The railroad company men began talking among themselves. One of the railroad company men with gray hair hidden under his hat and deep-set wrinkles on his face raised his hand, and all the railroad company men got quiet. John Henry watched as the man with the gray hair and deep-set wrinkles nodded his head as if to say yes to boss captain. He watches the man with the gray hair and deep-set wrinkles pointed to a small mountain with two set of railroad tracks running up to it. Then boss captain nodded his head as if to say yes to the man with the gray hair and deep-set wrinkles. Then boss captain left the railroad company men and walked up to John Henry. Well, John Henry, you got yourself a contest. You see that small mountain over there with a two set of railroad tracks running up to it? John Henry nodded his head. Well, there's going to be 2 tunnels in that mountain. One tunnel is going to be for the eastbound train to run through. The other tunnel is going to be for the westbound train to run through. You're to make one of the tunnels, and the steam driver machine is to make the other tunnel. Which tunnel do you want to make? I'll make the tunnel for the westbound train, said John Henry. All I need is 2 men to work as my shakers. You see, I will need 2 shakers to hold that steel to the mountain rock where my hammer's going to hit. And I'll guarantee you, I'll wear both of them out. All right, John Henry. I'll go tell the railroad company men. But before I do, I'd like to know, John Henry, why are you doing this? John Henry looked at Boss Captain. Boss Captain was looking John Henry square in the eyes. I'll tell you the truth, Boss Captain. I figure I really can outwork this machine. And if I figure I might stop a little progress along the way and save a few jobs. And if you can't, said Boss Captain, I'll die trying, said John Henry with a laugh. It was 7 o'clock in the morning when the morning whistle blew, when all the men gathered around as John Henry raised his 10-pound hammer in the air and swung with a mighty force against that mountain. At that same moment, the steam drive machine bored to that mountain with its grinding drill. Rocks broke loose at both places and flew into the air. The great contest between man and machine had begun. 1 hour later, and both John Henry and the steam drive machine had begun to open a small passageway in the mountain. As they tore rocks loose from the mountain, a crew of men hauled them away. 9 o'clock rolled by. 10 o'clock rolled by. John Henry and the steam drive machine was working neck and neck. John Henry was busting rocks with that 10-pound hammer, and the steam drive machine was drilling them loose, and a crew of men were hauling away. 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, word spread into town about this contest, and people came out of their homes and closed up their shops to come witness this mighty battle between man and machine. Polly Ann came with John Henry Jr. Word spread into the nearby farms, and John Henry's mama came with her walking stick. 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock. John Henry, the steam drive machine, was working without a moment's break. John Henry was working so hard, he wouldn't even take time to wipe the sweat from his brow. Wouldn't even take time to drink a drop of water. Wouldn't even take time to eat a bite of food. 4 o'clock, all of a sudden, John Henry called from inside the tunnel, "Bring me another hammer." One of the crew workers picked up a hammer and rushed into the tunnel. John Henry took those 2 hammers and began busting rocks with a hammer in both hands. 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. John Henry was busting rocks with a hammer in both hands, and the steam drive machine was drilling with full force. 7 o'clock. The sun began to go down, and the moon began to rise. Inside the tunnels, flickers of light could be seen. The lights on the steam drive machine, and the light on the lantern on John Henry's cabin. Midnight came, and still that battle wore on. Man against machine. John Henry with the 2 big hammers against the full force of the steam drive machine. 2 o'clock. The moon and stars fill the night sky. Some of the people